Maybe sit out some extra practices because the writing's on the wall. Now you got that story when you're looking for contracts next year with other teams saying, I didn't lose to Shedeur. My back got tight in camp and I couldn't function and I was coming off those injuries, but I'm good now. I had a full time of rest. That's something else to pay attention to. I think he's ahead of 60%. And the fact that Mary Kay said 60% yesterday is pretty damning that Shedeur's going to be the guy that wins this job.
Well, I mean, he's got to take the job. That's just how I look at this. The Browns have not made it a secret that Deshaun is going to get an opportunity.
Everyone said the same thing about Shedeur Sanders on draft night. Too confident, too loud, too risky. Then he kept falling. Round after round, team after team, silence where his name should have been. A quarterback with elite production suddenly looked like a gamble in the eyes of the league. But the moment he stepped onto an NFL field, the story started to crack. Big throws, calm presence, control under pressure. Enough flashes to force a question nobody wanted to face. Did the league misjudge him completely, or was this always going to happen? Now the situation has changed again. The Browns are stuck in uncertainty, a new quarterback is rising, and Shedeur stands right in the middle of it. This was supposed to be his chance to take control. Instead, it feels like another test of belief. Because this time, it goes beyond talent. It is about trust. And the NFL has already shown once how it feels about him.
It wasn't the talent that he got docked. It wasn't that he was stupid, which some people have tried to make it seem, or that he doesn't have a work ethic. None of that stuff was true. This was always the most obvious, that he went with a terrible strategy during those interviews, and the league got very scared. Isn't that what happened?
Yeah, but
you said you're shaking your head saying you don't agree.
Because I think it's
what
embellished.
Else was it?
I think it's embellished.
So what was it?
Because Anthony, if everybody keeps saying, well, the tape's not that bad, the tape's not that bad, and I got Greg Cosell saying, the tape's fine. If the tape is fine, unless he went up there and decided to be Don Rickles against all these general managers that he met, that might be the only way I would ever believe that.
The fall did not follow logic. Coming out of college, Shedeur Sanders had the profile teams claimed to value. Strong accuracy, composure under pressure, and the ability to carry an offense that relied on him every snap. He showed command at the line, adjusted plays, and stayed calm in chaotic situations where most quarterbacks tend to break. Then draft night arrived, and the conversation shifted away from football. Reports started surfacing about interviews, about personality, about how he carried himself in meetings. The discussion moved away from what he did on the field and focused more on how teams felt about him off it. Quarterbacks with weaker production were selected earlier. Players with less responsibility, less pressure, and fewer high-stakes moments were labeled as safer options. That word, safe, became more valuable than performance. Teams leaned toward predictability instead of proven resilience under real game conditions. As each round passed, the narrative grew heavier. Analysts began adjusting expectations in real time, explaining the fall instead of questioning it. Confidence around his value slowly turned into doubt, and doubt turned into justification for why teams kept passing on him.
Lima's always going to find a way. And he found this Todd McShay. This is yesterday or a couple of days before. Where was it on the Ringer? You went and found it. When did Todd McShay say what we're about to play? Do you know when did he say it?
Yeah, it was 2 days ago.
It was 2 days ago. Okay, here's Todd McShay. We've always been wondering why Shedeur ended up with us in the 5th round. Well, Todd McShay has an answer.
This is the plan. The plan is we're going to stick at 3 and take Abdul. And the Shedeur thing blew up, and I knew the behind stories and some of the things that happened in some of the meetings, and it wasn't good. I didn't know he was going to fall to the 5th. I thought 2nd round is probably where it's going to happen. But then you start to hear people in the league, and you understand the why.
By the time his name was finally called, the damage was already done. He was no longer viewed as a top quarterback prospect. He became a question mark, a player attached to risk rather than potential. That label carries weight in the NFL and shapes how teams treat players from day one. This situation created pressure before he even entered the league. Every decision he made, Every throw he attempted would be judged through that original lens. One mistake would reinforce what critics believed, while success would be seen as temporary instead of expected. The league did not reject his ability. The tape was there, the production was real, and the skill translated. What they rejected was certainty. They were unsure about everything surrounding him, and in the NFL, uncertainty often outweighs talent. That decision set the tone for everything that followed, and it ensured that Shedeur Sanders would enter the league with something to prove on every single snap. When Shedeur Sanders finally stepped onto the field, the situation offered no comfort. There was no gradual transition, no stable system built around him, and no guarantee of support. He entered a setup that demanded immediate results, where every drive carried weight and every mistake would be magnified instantly.
I think it's an almost impossible conversation to have. Like, do I think Shedeur is better than Ty Simpson? Yes, I do, for a lot of reasons that we can go into. I don't think Ty Simpson's played enough college football for me to even have him taken seriously. But I don't know. I think it's such a hard convo to even start with to say definitively one way or another. I guess it would just be based off of, I guess, how high he always thought Shedeur could be. And the lack of how high you think Ty Simpson could be then. Like, if those two are married together, but it's worthy of a convo. Oh, no.
Early on, he showed flashes that forced attention. The ball came out with precision, his timing looked sharp, and he stood confidently in the pocket even when pressure collapsed quickly around him. There were stretches where the offense moved smoothly, and he looked fully in control of the moment. Those sequences changed how people evaluated him. Analysts who once questioned his value started focusing on his mechanics, decision-making, and composure under pressure. The conversation shifted from doubt to curiosity as more people began to consider whether his draft position reflected his actual ability. But the performance never settled into consistency. Alongside those strong moments came interceptions at critical times, stalled drives, and games where the offense struggled to maintain rhythm. His numbers reflected that imbalance, showing enough production to stay relevant, but enough mistakes to keep concerns alive. This created a clear divide in how he was perceived. Some saw a young quarterback adjusting to the speed and complexity of the NFL, learning through real experience and showing signs of growth. Others saw inconsistency as a warning sign, pointing to instability rather than development. Even recognition such as a Pro Bowl selection added to the confusion. For some, it validated his impact and potential. For others, it felt premature and exaggerated. Instead of settling the debate, it intensified it and pushed both sides further apart. What made his rookie season unique was the coexistence of two realities. He proved that he belonged at the professional level, yet he also showed that his game required refinement and time. That balance made it difficult for the team to commit fully in either direction. And in the NFL, hesitation at the quarterback position rarely leads to stability. It creates pressure, and that pressure has now shifted directly onto the Browns. The Cleveland Browns entered this phase needing clarity at quarterback. Instead, they find themselves in another cycle of uncertainty, where no single option feels secure enough to build around. The position remains open, and every possible direction carries risk rather than confidence. Shedeur Sanders sits at the center of this situation, representing both potential and unpredictability. He has shown enough to remain in contention, but not enough to remove all doubt. That balance makes it difficult for the organization to commit fully to him as their long-term solution. At the same time, the team carries pressure from past decisions. Expectations remain high, and the need for immediate results continues to grow. A disappointing season only increases that urgency, forcing the front office to consider faster solutions instead of patient development.
Middle of the day, day 3. What on earth could he have done in them interviews?
Well, that's what Todd said that. Todd's like, the tape was not 5th round. He said he was essentially so bad from the stories he heard throughout the interview processes from talking to the people around the NFL. And doesn't that seem like the most logical thing that happened? It's not that we were like the whole league was starting to pass these narratives around that he's not smart or that, the skill isn't there or the work ethic is bad. No, he told these teams what they didn't want to hear. And everybody at home and everybody on YouTube that is listening, you can determine whether it's bad that the league puts that much stock into that stuff.
A new coaching staff adds another layer of complexity. New systems often reset evaluations, meaning previous performances carry less weight. Every quarterback must prove themselves again within a different structure, and that process removes any sense of security from the current roster. For Shedeur, this means starting over in many ways. Training camp becomes critical, preseason performances become defining, and even small mistakes can shift perception quickly. The margin for error becomes extremely narrow in a situation that already lacks stability. Instead of building around a developing quarterback, the organization appears to be exploring alternatives. That approach signals hesitation and sends a message to both the player and the locker room. It suggests that the team remains uncertain about its direction at the most important position.
So it's worthy of a convo, and what I think is interesting is, I guess Ty Simpson's just not on any of my draft boards, right? He's gotten the red dot from me because of the lack of experience.
What's the big deal with Ty Simpson, for instance? It's the idea that he has to take time, right? That's it. He's got to, maybe not this year, but it'd be years down the line, and maybe with enough reps and enough everything, he can morph into something. Well, if the convo that the Browns are having exclusively exists in a one-year window because they're so focused on the 2027 draft, if you told me tomorrow, fate of the universe on the line, I get to pick one quarterback between Shedeur Sanders and Ty Simpson to save the world, isn't that pretty obviously you're taking Shedeur Sanders then?
Quarterbacks rely on trust and clarity to succeed. Without those elements, development becomes inconsistent and performance becomes unpredictable. The Browns are currently operating without either, creating an environment where no outcome feels stable. And when a team reaches that point, the next move often changes everything, regardless of whether it solves the problem or makes it worse. Despite all the uncertainty, belief in Shedeur Sanders has not disappeared. In fact, some of the most respected voices in football continue to back him. Analysts point to traits that cannot be taught easily, including poise under pressure, confidence in high-stakes moments, and the ability to command an offense even when the structure around him breaks down. That belief comes from what he has already shown. He stepped into a difficult situation and did not shrink. He made throws that require timing and courage. He handled pressure without losing composure, even when mistakes followed. Those are indicators of a quarterback who can grow rather than one who is already defined by inconsistency. Supporters also highlight the context around his struggles. A young quarterback rarely develops smoothly without stability, and the Browns have provided anything but that. Changes in coaching, shifting expectations, and a lack of clear direction create an environment where growth becomes uneven. Under those conditions, flashes of control matter more than perfect consistency. There is also a deeper layer to the belief. Shedeur has already experienced something most quarterbacks never face so early in their careers. Being doubted before entering the league, falling in the draft, and carrying that narrative into every snap builds a different kind of resilience. It forces adaptation, focus, and mental strength that often separates long-term starters from short-term options.
I think his fans embrace that, and that's what makes Shedeur Sanders unique and stand above the crowd. But it wasn't going to help you in that interview process, and he got docked for it big time. It wasn't the talent that he got docked. It wasn't that he was stupid, which some people have tried to make it seem, or that he doesn't have a work ethic. None of that stuff was true. This was always the most obvious, that he went with a terrible strategy during those interviews, and the league got very scared.
It just
isn't that what happened?
Yeah, but
you said you're shaking your head saying you don't agree.
Because I think it's
what
embellished.
Else was it?
I think it's embellished.
So what was it?
Because Anthony, if everybody keeps saying, well, the tape's not that bad, the tape's not that bad, and I got Greg Cosell saying, the tape's fine.
For these analysts, the question is not whether he has flaws. Every young quarterback does. The question is whether his strengths are strong enough to develop into something stable over time. And for them, the answer remains yes. At this point, the conversation around Shedeur Sanders has moved beyond talent. His ability is visible. His strengths and weaknesses have both been exposed. What remains uncertain is something more difficult to measure, and that is trust. The NFL questioned him before he entered the league. That doubt shaped his draft position and defined the narrative that followed him. Now, the Browns are facing a similar moment. They have seen enough to understand what he can become, yet they hesitate to fully commit to that future. That hesitation speaks louder than any statistic. It reflects how organizations make decisions when the pressure rises. Quarterbacks are not only evaluated on performance, they are judged on reliability, consistency, and the belief that they can carry a team when everything is on the line. Right now, Shedeur exists in the space between promise and certainty. He has shown that he can lead, but he has not removed enough doubt to secure unquestioned trust. That gap is where careers shift direction. If the Browns choose to stand behind him, they invest in development and accept the risk that comes with growth. If they move on or bring in competition, they signal that belief has limits. Both choices carry consequences that will shape the future of the franchise. This is what makes the situation so significant. It is no longer about whether Shedeur Sanders can play. It is about whether an organization is willing to believe in what he could become. And in the NFL, that decision often defines everything that follows.